start our first round of question, and we will begin with Mr. Reddycop. Mr. Reddycop, you will have 6 minutes. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank all the witnesses for being here today, and I apologize that we got started late, but we'll make the best of the time that we have. And in that light, Mr. Guy, I just want to make a note to you. You mentioned about examples that you have, and you may get some questions on that, but I would just encourage you to please write some of those down and submit them to the committee in written form, because that would be very, very helpful for us to look at later, and we may not have enough time to talk about them, so I would just suggest that for you. To Mr. Mendoza, thank you for being here today. Your third point that you mentioned on racism, your suggestions there about having supervisor concurrence, providing case notes, and some sort of a grievance system. And I guess my question to you is, those recommendations obviously came out of some experiences that you've had and some cases that you've had. Could you give us some examples of what those cases might be, just to give us some context on that?
Okay, so thank you, Your Honor, for your questions. So basically, with regards with, our situation as immigration consultants and applicants is when we submit applications, we're basically talking to a wall. We submit an application, we do it online, but we don't have a way to even speak to the other person on the other side. So if we get a decision, if we get anything from any application, it would just be probably a notice of a medical or some issues about one not believing, let's say, for example, a couple is not truly a common law couple. So for one is, well, my situation is I don't receive too many refusals because, but the problem is once we get those refusals, it ends. Like it's basically talking to a wall. You don't have anybody to call to explain the said decision. So I think that's basically my point on asking for immediate access to access notes, because there's a solution right now. It's basically asking through the ATIP system or the access to information and privacy system, which would require a different process for us to even just generate or get whatever case notes the officers have into look into those process. So basically those the issues that I raise here are basically brought about by the situation that applicants and even immigration consultants ourselves are basically talking to a wall.
Okay, thank you.
So right now,
thank you. So I noticed that on your website you talk about Caregiver Class as one of the categories that you work with. And according to the department's own figures, it takes sometimes up to two years on average to fill a Caregiver Class, while some other jobs that are traditionally geared towards Caucasians or others get filled a little bit faster. And I asked the Associate Deputy Minister of Immigration why these numbers are different, and she didn't have an answer for me. And just wondering, in your experience, have you seen a difference, lengthy times in caregiver applications, and what are some examples, or do you have any examples of that?
Well, basically, thank you, Your Honor. So basically, the first application we did under the new caregiver program, we submitted December 2019. We only had an approval of a work permit this January 2022. So that's almost more than, 2 years of processing. I have another client. We submitted an application before that. We submitted an application as well with a work permit. So basically, she's considered unemployed status. So she's working on her work permit's already expired, but basically she's working on an implied status because we submitted the application before expiry. But up to now, more than 2 years, we haven't received any decision yet on the work permit. So we have a client here, like she might not have access to healthcare. She might not have access to other government services because she has an expired work permit. So basically that's the kind of situations that we had. I never seen yet, since the new caregiver program was launched, a quick processing time. Right now, after 2 years, I only had one result. The rest, we're still waiting.
I want to switch gears a bit to talk about human trafficking. We've had several issues that have brought this up, and the issue of mail-order brides. And we had Arlene Ruiz from Saskatoon herself actually was here last meeting, and she spoke about this with my colleague. And I had a case in my constituency where a Filipino woman was dumped by her husband basically because she had terminal breast cancer, and then she was deported. I've asked the IRCC officials why our human trafficking laws are not being exercised properly and didn't really get an answer to that. So I wonder if you have thoughts on, have you ever seen anything like that? Have you seen if there are safeguards in place to protect vulnerable women from Immigration Canada and CBSA?
With regards with human trafficking, I think there has been some progress in terms of there are programs for those that have vulnerable spouse here in Canada to be able to get out of the system and apply for something else. Basically, I'm just not really. I don't have a personal experience in terms of couples having human trafficking issue. I have more personal experience in terms of applications being delayed indefinitely because they just don't believe that the couple is a couple without further explaining the situation. So I had this case where I had a couple. We received a note that the officer didn't.
Sorry for